starts sending me backwards. So I'm going, well, I don't understand the values, so that's why I'm thinking. I said I'll jump in with tonight and see. Obviously, you've worked out the method, so I'll
I don't think I've worked out the method. I'm just stupid enough to spend hours on here and go around in circles and keep making changes till I go faster.
fair enough. Fair
It
enough.
works though. That's the main thing.
That's it.
With the race setups, I've just been doing some testing, and the lower you can get your camber, the better the wear by the looks of it, and it doesn't really change the handling that much as long as you stiffen the roll bars. Is that what you found, Steve?
I haven't changed camber too much. To be honest, I haven't done a lot of setup for SMP yet because there's no rubber down.
Okay.
I played today and I just went through the spectrum of making changes from roll bars to bumps and rebounds, but I didn't really play with camber. I left it fairly neutral because I didn't think camber would make a big difference here because being obviously medium or high speed, you're going to need camber. But now, you've had some results saying that you don't need the camber on, and this is the thing. It just doesn't make sense, but it works.
Yeah, no, those results that I've posted already, they were with a completely different philosophy. I've just been doing some playing with some different things at the moment. But yeah, just for race setup, I'm talking. It seems like the camber is the basically how long your tires are going to last is based on your camber and how low you can get it.
Yeah, okay. Because obviously with 4 times wear, it's gonna be great. Like I'm running 4.9 on the front, 3.2 on the back at the moment.
Oof.
Obviously, that's too high.
You can run your camber quite high for quali, and you can get a lot out of it. But you're absolutely right when it comes to race pace, and saving your tires. I do dial it right back. That said, I did a I did a few laps around in the GT3s. Did a few laps around what's that freaking track? Zandvoort. And I turned the camber right off. I tried to make the wheels as flat as I could, and I set a ripper lap without trying. So get your head around that one.
Yeah, you get better exits out of the corners because the rear tires are flat and basically you point it and go.
Yeah,
with that kind of setup.
That track lends itself a bit more to
Yeah.
that style of driving, but it just shows you that you really do have to play with some things sometimes and go against what you believe, and sometimes it pays off.
Yeah, for sure.
What was the password, guys?
It's White Dog.
It is White Dog. Okay. Yep. No worries. Thank you.
Stephen, you'd like this one. I was on a job today in an office and installing some computers, and the lady there, she was talking about a new car that she was buying today, and chatting to her about it, and turns out that she used to work for HRT.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And and I said, "Oh, what era did you?" And she goes, "I started in '97." And I thought, "Okay, so then you'd know White Dog, would you?" "Oh, White Dog's my favourite."
I know who you're talking about. She's gorgeous.
Sarah Coe says hello.
Yes.
Anyway.
Sarah is beautiful.
Yeah, she's a good person. Good soul.
She is.
So yeah, anyway, I was having a good chat to her today because just out in Hastings working away doing stuff. Yeah, funny. Small world.
Yeah, small world. All right, I'll just go out and do a lap and just see where the track's at, and then see if anyone else turns up, and we'll get started.
Sounds good.
Hello. How are we?
Yeah, good mate. How are you?
Locking enabled.
Looks like a nice thin laid rubber line.
Yeah, it's great to see some rubber down.
Yeah, but when the AI do it, they only make it a car width wide. So if you're not on the line, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So who are we waiting on? Have we got everyone yet? No. Just look for V8 training server.
Egan will be the first one up.
There's traffic behind. Keep your wits about you. Disengage limiter. Brake temperature's low. I need to get some heat into them. The tyres are cold. Watch out.
Now, sorry.
Even when I search dust, I'm only getting the GT3
You can
V8
do
lead.
it.
It doesn't have dust on it.
Doesn't.
V8 training server.
V8 supercar tracking server.
You got it.
Get past that.
Fastest lap for White on 26.2. The guy ahead has just done it on 30.5. Sixth place. I think this is still two. Can be from second off and second off. Yeah, just
Check but what we go. Give me another 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
sector 2 is 0.2 of the pace. Sector 3 time is quick.
So weird jumping back into lead after I played on M1.
Yeah, it's massively different, isn't it?
Yeah.
The same thing with coming from the GT3 back to this Android, just not going to the corners hard.
Yeah.
You're 2/10 off the pace in sector 1.
So we're just waiting.
I guess while we're waiting, I know that it's probably better when everyone's here, but
The front is hot.
yeah,
You've got to
I'll
be right front
keep
tyre.
this there.
New fastest
If you
lap
could try and get some
26.
rubber down.
Alright, Craig, you've got 10 minutes of fuel remaining. P3. Sector 3 is 0.3 off the pace. Okay, Craig, your water and your oil are both looking pretty hot right now. Try and take it easy. Yellow flag, caution.
Log building finished.
Welcome aboard, Steve.
Just getting set up, guys. I'll be there shortly.
That's a new fastest lap for Broadbent, 125.3. Okay, Craig, your engine temperatures are looking better now.
Alright, well we might as well kick things off anyway. So I'm trying to get in contact with Mad Dog, can't get a response out of him, and Dean Goggy's running just a little bit late, so he'll be with us shortly. Thank you everyone for coming along tonight. As you're aware, Steve approached the DUS admin team to see if there'd be any interest from people to learn how to tame these beasts. but obviously there was quite a level of interest. So here we are. We'll let Steve take over and run the evening, but hopefully the aim of it obviously is to bring everyone as much knowledge as possible to help them improve their methodologies and understanding of not only rFactor 2 but just how to approach our V8 series and these cars. And feel free to save any questions you've got to the end, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask whatever curly ones you have. And yeah, look forward to seeing everyone in the top 10 at the next race.
That'll be awesome.
Exactly. All right, Steve. Well, whenever you're ready, mate, I'll let you take the reins.
All right. Thanks, Chriso, and it's great to get a little bit of response to, to also give a little bit back to the guys that make our series happen, because if there's only 5 of us racing, for example, well, there is no series. So it only happens because everybody turns up. Everyone's got a different vast range of experiences, and everyone's got different reasons why they're here as well. But I've just written down a few things in terms of what I found and what I also find in teaching. I notice that when I do watch you guys, when I do have a bit of a break on a race night, for example, and watching how you miss your marks and run wide and use a lot of tyre to do a lap. And the one thing I'd love to do, if you're up for it, is I want you to go out on the track at the moment with your own setup, with 50 litres of fuel on hard tyres, with your own steering setting, your own brake setting, and do 5 laps. And so 5 laps means 3 time laps. And we'll do that, and then I'll go through and have a look at the averages over those laps, and then we'll move on. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Good.
Yep.
Too easy.
Hey guys, can I just confirm the server name? I can't seem to find the server.
Search V8 Supercars. One word.
And remember to give yourselves a bit of space as well.
So it's our own setup, hard tyres, 50 litres.
Correct. So we're all on the same vote, except you've got your own setup.
Okay.
That search was V8 Supercar, not Supercars.
Yep, cheers.
Logging enabled.
All right, I'm in, I think, guys. Thanks.
So once you're ready, Dunny, put in your setup, 50 litres of fuel, hard tyres, your own steering setting, brake setting, go out.
It takes it's clear. Green lights and I know you have time as you need to get to the heated. In your own brakes and confidence.
Yeah, I'll do. All right, thanks, mate.
Brake temperatures look good. 1.8 seconds off the base. Sector 3 is 0.5 off the base. Okay, Craig, your water temperature looks quite high. You picked up some minor aero damage. B7. Left side tyres are cold. Yellow flag in sector 3. We think Williams has gone off. Green flag sector 3. Yellow flag sector 3. Your engine temperatures are okay. All clear on engine temperatures. Sector 2 is 0 seconds off the base. Sector 3 is 3.3 seconds off the base.
I think that's my fault.
Yellow flag.
Yeah, once you're done 3 time laps, that'll be enough.
Log building finished.
Yeah, radiator wasn't set up for it. It's getting a bit warm.
Haha. Okay, I think that's everyone now, isn't it? I'll share with you a secret. The difference between Wayne Walker and the rest of us is those laps he did, the variation in terms of the difference between the slowest time and the fastest time will only be, let's say, for example, within half a second. So if we go through and look at sort of the averages from the slowest time to the fastest time you did. So like at the moment with Craig, his first lap was a 1:25.3 and his third lap was a 26.5. So over those 3 laps, we had about let's say a 1 second separation. And as we know, Craig's one of the fast guys in our series. So with ties at ×4, to see a separation of about a second, you know, that's a pretty good start. And then if we go down to Paul and we have a look at 3 laps, Paul's done a 27.2 to a 28.0. So again, that's actually pretty consistent too, isn't it, Paul? That's actually quite good in terms of a spread of a second.
Yeah, pretty on the post.
Let's look at Jace. Jace is a second. Okay, that's good. Let's have a look at Dunny. Dunny's got a little bit of separation. He's done a 26.5 and a 28.3. So there's nearly 2 seconds in that one. If we go to Brady,
That's embarrassing.
28, 28, 27.
You're not embarrassing.
So
mate.
you can see with Brady, like it's a little bit up and down. So you can see it's a little bit inconsistent. If we go to Craig, and Craig is a little bit the same as Brady, where it's a little bit inconsistent. And Liam, 29, 29, 44. So obviously on that third lap,
Quite a shocker, unfortunately. Sorry, mate.
No, you're right. This is what it's all about. Because what we need to do is bridge that gap from, you know, let's say Craig could be the benchmark for you guys tonight. You can see that Craig's times, like he's in the top 5 in the championship. He's got a second spread over those 3 time laps. And so one of your goals tonight is to get closer to Craig with the overall lap time with the consistency. And let's look at Jono. So Jono's done 31, 31, 30. So they're reasonably consistent, but the times are getting a little bit slow. And then Chris didn't go out. Okay, let me bring up my notes again.
Naughty Chris.
Those
Yeah,
names
no,
are-
I'm on the PC tonight.
Okay.
Ooh.
So what I've written down here in the next paragraph is you need to ask yourself why you're doing this. Is it for fun, or do you actually want to win, or you're here to be with your mates? Because to give you a little bit of inside information, say about me, who you're going to fight against, who you're going to have to beat if you want to be on the podium. I race to win. I'm pretty motivated. Everything I do in life, regardless of whether I can actually win, I do it to win. Everything I do 100% to the best of my ability, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to be successful with the tools I have to work with. So, for example, if you're the type of guy that grabs a can of JD and Coke on a night of racing and enjoys the banter and really enjoys being out there with the guys, you've got no hope in the world of having a chance of beating me. If you're here to just do the best you can and enjoy yourself, and you're prepared to put a little bit of time in, well, then you're going to have a chance of getting better results. And if you're here for similar reasons to myself, to figure out how to beat Wayne in this championship, and beat Wayne on the track full stop consistently, well, then we're on the same wavelength. So you got to compare apples with apples. And I think some people get a little bit frustrated because they want to go better, but then they're not prepared to put the work in, and they're not sort of really motivated to really want to be in the top 5, for example. So I guess that's something that is for yourself to answer. It's not an open conversation. It's just for yourself to think about. The next paragraph. As we're just sort of looking at there, the reason why I got you just to do 5 laps, 3-time laps, is I just wanted to see the consistency between all of you, because as we started to brief on before, it's consistency that will pretty much win you the race. If you have the stats which Chris can give you the details for, if you don't have it, but I forget what it's called now. It's in the live races, whatever those websites are that give you all the stats. If you look at the best consistency over the race distance, I was the best. I think I was within 2 or 3 seconds throughout the whole race for the hour and a half, whatever it was. And that's why I won, because I was able to do laps that wasn't flat out, but also wasn't too slow, but laps that I could do consistently for that hour and a half that we were on track. And when I have a look at some of the drivers in the field and look at those stats, like some of those stats go out to 7 seconds throughout the race in terms of slowest lap to fastest lap. When I did some one-on-one work with Justin Bryce in the GT3s at Bathurst last year, I can't remember why I didn't do the race, but I didn't. So I got onto Justin's live broadcast and I watched him. And obviously, because we were on Discord, I actually gave him some advice, and he was trying so hard to do a qualifying lap every lap. Guess how many laps he got right out of 10, for example? Maybe 1. So I said to Justin, slow the fuck down, brother. Take 2 seconds off your lap time to gain 5 minutes over the race distance. Because if you can't hit your marks, which we'll talk about in a tick, if you can't hit your marks and you can't be consistent, you can't do the shortest time that you can achieve over 2 hours of racing and expect to be at the front. It just ain't going to happen. No one cares if you do the lap record in the race, if you can only do 1 lap of it, and then the rest of the laps are 15-second spread over that duration. So this is sort of information that I teach on the track, and it will apply to some of you here tonight. It may be some information that you already know. The first thing that we do when we jump in with drivers on a racetrack is have them take us around and we have a look at their racing lines. And what we find is on the entry of a corner, the driver actually is about 1 meter in from the racing line. They turn into the corner a little bit shallow. In other words, they turn in a little bit early. They don't brake hard enough. They actually don't make the apex on the inside. They miss the apex by about 1 meter. The apex is obviously the clipping part of the inside of the corner of where you get the car to. And then they're still washing off speed all the way through the corner. And it's not until they get about 3/4 of the way around that they can start to come off the brake. And then they straighten up the wheel. And then we've exited the corner by then. And then once they get the car straight, then they start to get back on the power and accelerate up to the next corner. And for those of you that understand motorsport, that's probably the slowest way you can ever go around a corner.
Okay, Craig, 15 minutes left. That's 15 minutes.
So the first thing we talk about is racing lines. And if you don't understand racing lines, I'll quickly go over it. The easiest way I explain it to someone on the racetrack is you're drawing a straight line through a corner. So when you arrive at a corner, you get the ruler out and you go from outside to inside to outside. That is the most basic way of explaining it. And you've got to make sure on corner entry that whatever the color line is on the outside, you're next to it. In terms of the apex, which is that clipping part on the inside of the corner, you've got to get there. Regardless of what you do, you've got to get there. Now, obviously, at some circuits and some places we go to, your apex isn't going to be conventionally in the middle of the corner, like when you get that ruler and draw a straight line through it. Some corners you might apex early, some corners you might apex later. But a general rule of thumb, especially when you're teaching somebody new on a racetrack, is just do conventional. Make it the same at every corner so you get consistency. And then obviously when you unwind the wheel and straighten the car up, you go back out to that white line or yellow line, whatever it is, on the exit of the corner. So basically what you've done is you've used the least amount of steering possible to go through the corner. You've also loaded the car up smoothly as you go through the corner to get the best weight transfer. And you've also created the shortest distance possible to go through that corner as well. So there's wins and ticks all around. When it comes to driving fast, one of the biggest components of being able to do that well is to be looking ahead, to look through corners, to keep your mind in front of the car. If you can't keep your mind in front of the car, in other words, to be able to process information and anticipate and be ready for what's about to happen, you're always going to be slow. And this is what we find on the track with human beings behind the wheel, is especially when it's their first time, it's pretty overwhelming. They don't realize how fast, say, 200k is down straight. They don't realize the braking pressure that you need when you come up to a corner, and then they panic and they're too busy reacting to what the car's doing rather than being proactive and making the right actions before they happen. So if you find that you're chasing the car a lot, if you find that the car's driving you more when you're going around the circuit, you need to slow down and do some laps a few tenths slower than what you think you can do, and make sure that your brain can process information and can plan ahead in front of the car. This is why when I talk to some of you, I think driving the F1 car is one of the best things we can do to be better drivers in the V8s, because you have to train your mind to be able to process that information quickly. Because in the F1 car, if you don't stay in front of that car, you are in the wall before you can say boo. You're off the circuit before you can say boo. You're on a rev limiter for 5 minutes before you can say boo. If you miss your braking marker in the V8 for a corner by a meter, generally you'll just scrub your way through the corner. You miss the braking point in the F1 car by a meter, if you're close to the limit, you're off the road. So I wouldn't stress about trying to set the car up for F1 unless you understand some of the things you would like to change. All I would do is take some fuel out, just have fuel for 10 laps, do your steering, do your brake bias to what you like. You can maybe trim the wings down a little bit because they do tend to come up quite high. You can trim the wings down a little bit. You can probably lower the ride height a little bit just to make it a little bit nicer, and just do laps and learn to change gears quickly and plan ahead, and learn where you need to set yourself up for the corners, and just, it's brain training. That's all it is. Use it as brain training. And I will just about guarantee you a $3 personal check from my own
Craig,
account.
10 minutes to go. That's 10
if
minutes
that
left.
doesn't help you driving the V8, because when you come back and drive the V8, you'll realize we're driving taxis, the 6-cylinder engines from that you see out there in the real world. You're not actually driving a V8 supercar after you're driving the F1 car. So I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying that's what I do. As much as I enjoy driving the F1 cars and I enjoy setting them up, primary, I do use it though for brain training and reaction training and keeping me strong for when I do jump in the V8. Okay. So if we go back to the customer, when you're a new guy on a racetrack, what we teach straight away is you got to hit your racing lines, you got to hit your marks, and we'll do maybe 10 laps of doing perfect racing lines, say at 5/10, not going flat out, not going even incredibly fast, just at 5/10, because the driver has to put in their memory bank of where to place the car, where to get the car to, and where to let the car finish up on the racetrack while they're in a calm state. And so we go out, we do those sort of 10 laps, and we just drive around and we make sure we hit your marks. That is the most important, crucial part to getting around the track consistently, driving the car well. Then the next step we work on is corner exit. Because if you cannot get on the power by the apex of a corner, you've done something wrong. And as you unwind the lock on the wheel, you should be pushing more power down. So when you start looking at the traction circle and getting really technical with how grip works for a tire, to give you a really basic introduction to it that's really easy to understand, you can only ask the tire to do 100% of one thing at one time. So if you're accelerating 100%, and you're doing it in a straight line, well, you can ask 100% of the tire. If you've got lock on the wheel and you're trying to push the accelerator down 100%, very, very likely you're going to struggle unless you can stay within inside the traction circle, depending on how much lock you've got on the wheel, will determine how much power you can put down at that time. And it's no different with braking. When you're turning into a corner, you don't just lift off the brakes, you roll off the brake gently as you turn into the corner. Now, there are some cars that you drive, like say Carrera Cup, for example. If we do get a chance to drive those cars, you can only brake in a straight line only. And the F1 cars of 1991 are very similar, where you can only brake in a straight line only. You can't do that trial braking. But think about this for the supercars, because this is what we're aiming to do, is as you turn into the corner, you should be reducing brakes. You should be back on the power by the apex. And as you straighten up the wheel, you should be pushing more power down. And we've spoken about vision, looking through corners, looking up the road. So what I'll do, I'll jump in my car, I'll drive around the track, and I'll give you some guidance for Sydney Motorsport Park. As you know, for SMP, it's actually quite a technical circuit. There are some corners that you double apex. There are some corners you apex early. There are some corners where you apex late. I can only share with you what I feel. I'm not saying that I do it right. It's only through my experience of doing laps with how the car responds over the bumps, how the car responds to weight transfer, where the car tends to grip up, what curbs I can get away with using, what curbs I can't get away with using, trying different gears, etc. What works for me. What works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. As most of you know, Rod Browning is one of my closest, dearest friends, and got me involved with DUS in the first place. Especially when we started, he was giving me his setups and giving me guidance to help, I guess.
Okay, Craig, 5 minutes to go. 5 minutes
speed up
left.
my learning curve. And it's got to a point now where I can't use his setups, he can't use mine. Just simply because of our driving styles are very different. He's more of a traditional driver. He doesn't like a very sharp turning car. He likes a progressive turning car that puts the weight transfer in gently. and he likes a nice sort of arc through the corner, where myself, I like a pointy car. I like when I turn the wheel, the car actually turns. I like to try and square off the apex part of the corner as much as I can without giving away too many secrets. And I try and get the car as straight as I can, as early as I can for an exit of a corner. So you may have heard of the diamond effect through the V8 supercars. My sort of driving style is similar to Lounsey. I tend to turn in early, square off the apex, and straighten up for the exit. If you look at Garth Tander, he's all about the exit. He'll use a radius into the corner, and whatever he can do to square that car up as early as he can, all he's worried about is getting power down to the road. So he tends to have more of a later apex on general. If you look at Mark Winterbottom, he tends to have more of a radius when he goes through the corner. When you look at Whincup, when you look at Gizzy, again, they tend to diamond the corner off a little bit. They do little chunks of quick turns on the wheel to get weight transfer, to get a technique that they use that way to get the car to turn. So there's lots of different ways that you can use to get the car to go where you want it to go. Now in the game, it is a little bit superficial. It doesn't work as well in the game as what it does in the real world, but it does have a small effect with all that. But once again, I wouldn't stress too much about that unless you hit your marks, your mind's in front of the car, and you can do consistent lap times without making mistakes. Because there's no point trying to be arty-farty if you can't do the basics first. So Chris, because we're about to finish a session,
I was just going to say, I'm going to reset the practice.
And then I'll go out.
Yeah. So I'm just going to press the button on that now. I think I just did it.
That's the end of the session. P7.
Is it working? And
No, it's not working, mate. Now it is.
there we go. And hopefully the real road comes back up. If it doesn't, don't stress.
You didn't save it.
I did save it.
I'm only joking with you, mate.
How many times do you save things and then you go back and look at it and it's gone?
Well, it's not where you thought it was.
Yeah. All right, back to you, Whitey.
Okay, so some of you may be aware that when we raced the Camaros a few weeks ago, we had Matty Ogg come on just before qualifying, and obviously when he went out on the track, he was a few seconds off the pace, and all I wanted to do was help him before the race and be a part of the race rather than just be down the back all by himself. So I spoke to him and guided him around the track for the 10-minute warm-up and got him within a couple of seconds of where he needed to be to at least be in the field and have a bit of fun throughout the weekend. Now, SMP, it's a really, really difficult track to sort of talk about because there's so many variations and differences of how you do things to get the car to go around. But again, these are only my thoughts. I'm not saying they work. This is what I like. And what you got to find with SMPs, you've got to have aggression, but also have patience because the track is a little bit bumpy in places where the car gets unstable. And so you've got to be smooth with the car. So it's all about controlled aggression. So as we come down, I think it's turn 10 now rather than turn 9 down here at the second gear hairpin. Like here you need patience, squeeze the power on. I would get into habit here on the exit of not letting the car go wider than the driving side wheels on that yellow line, because you know when it comes to Saturday night that Chris and Rich and the boys from DUS are going to be on top of that. And the same here, try to keep the passenger wheels on the yellow line. On the exit, this is where I might debate Chris. I don't understand why we might not be able to use the whole exit curve, because there's no real advantage by using all of it because it gets slippery there. But at the same time, just to be consistent, I would be practicing to do my best not to let the passenger side wheels go over that yellow line. Turn 1, it's quite a fast flowing corner, so it's not a hard break into the corner, but yet you've got to get the car turned in, you've got to get to your apex so you can get back on the power by the apex. You can let the car run right out wide onto the concrete apron, then it's hard on the brakes. Now, this is where you see the guys use different techniques here. Some stay mid-track and make it an arc and apex the corner 3 corners of the way around. Some double apex it, like where I am now. They will turn in early, straight line, more braking, so you can brake later into the corner. The only problem with that is when you get halfway around, you've got to make the car rotate even more, and the car has to work harder in the middle part of the apex. But what I find personally is as long as you get the car slowed down, you can get it rotated without using too much tire, and then apex again for your exit quite late, so you can straight line the exit of the corner and actually get a nice straight line and squeeze the power down gently. You can use a little bit of curb here and hug it around to the right, and then once again you head right out, and you should be just on the verge of wanting to use that concrete slab there on the left. When you come down the hill here, what I hate is there's a big bump just here that I've just gone over. So you've got to make sure that when you go over that bump that you've got your speed set for the corner, because if you don't, it unsettles the car, you can't get to the apex, and then again you're going to lose time, because all through here basically is one section, and you lose a little bit of time in one corner. Let's say you lose 2/10 in one corner, you're going to end up losing half a second over the next 700 meters of the circuit, purely because of the time that you lost at the start. As we come into turn 5 here, again, we've got to be careful on the exit, and I know it's really inviting to want to use more road, but again, I would practice with trying to keep at least the passenger wheels on that yellow line, because you know that's going to come back and haunt you on race night. Here, this is your traditional 90-degree corner. This is the corner that works perfectly for the ruler that I talk about when we're teaching drivers for the first time. Obviously, we're on the outside. We've got a turning point to apex the corner in the middle part, and then you unwind the lock on the wheel, and again, you've got a little bit of extra road to use there on the exit. Coming up the Corporate Hill, you turn a little bit right before you actually turn left, but it's important to get the car into the apex, so it's actually quite an early turn in there. You can use all the road on the exit if you want to. As we come down into the hairpin, again, there's a mixture of lines that everybody uses in the real world. Some people stay in the middle of the road, some people go out wide. For me, I feel it's important to get maximum attack through Corporate Hill and get the car stopped in the middle of the road for the hairpin. At the end of the day, by opening up the radius of the corner, I think compared to the middle of the road, there's not as much gain as what there is by carrying more speed through Corporate Hill, but that's just my opinion. On the exit, obviously, once again, trying to keep the driver's side wheels on the yellow line. So if we do a medium speed lap, obviously down the third, I go back to second, over the curbs, out towards that yellow line, up the third, back to second, up to the curb, be patient, getting on the power, squeezing the power down, out over the yellow line to where the passenger wheels are, and then obviously flat out when we go down the straight. So I tend to brake just before turning.
Fastest lap for
So as we get to the corner on the brakes, I'm going down to 5th at the moment, back on the power at the apex, squeezing it down as I straighten up the road. Use back on the brakes, back down the second, get your braking done, patience in the middle, get the rotation done, then get back on the power, squeeze it down gently, up the third, hug it around to the right, look through the corner, use all the road on the exit, squeeze the power down flat. Up over the hill, up the 5th, down to 3rd, careful over that hump, get it into the apex. Now here on the exit, I tend to use about the middle of the road, back to the right, get it turned in. Well, I didn't quite get it turned in enough. Squeeze the power onto the exit. Passenger wheels on that yellow line, back on the brakes, back to second, get it turned into the curb, squeeze the power on, unwind the lock on the wheel, looking ahead, up to 4th, turn it in early, hug it around to the left for the apex, squeeze the power down flat, hard on the brakes, middle of the road. Patience, get the car stopped, get it turned into the apex, look for the exit, squeeze the power down, look up the road, flat on the gas, and away we go. Flat on turning, back down the fourth, get it up to the curb, back to third, back to second if you want to, or stay in third, that's up to you. Out to the yellow line, turn it back in, patience, get into the apex, squeeze the power down, look up the road. So, what I want to do now is I'll just grab my phone again. I think I want you guys to go back out on the track and drive at 7/10 with the same setup that you've just had with your 50 litres of fuel, whatever the setup is, steering, brakes and everything. And I just want you to hit your marks, but I'll just double check my phone.
While Steve's doing that, does everyone know Live Races? Does everyone follow that and have the link for it?
Yep.
Sure do.
There's also another tool that we use, and it's called RF2 Log Analyzer, and it's where we do all the championship points calculating. It also provides brilliant statistics over race distances and graphs and a lot of data that you can use to check your consistency and that sort of information. If anyone needs a copy of that URL, it sits on our server. Just shout out and I'll forward it to you.
Also, for any of the guys who were listening to Stephen about looking forward, and like as you come out of the apex, you should be looking at where the car's heading. But there's a guy who's done a great one. I think it's for iRacing, but it won't matter. But he shows you at the points you should be looking at the track. And he actually put marks up and tells you. So I'll put a link up if you want to check that out, because he tells you where to look when you approach the corner. In the middle of the corner, you should be looking to where you're coming out of the corner, and then, like he said, looking up the road, and just shows a lot of.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, Jason. And that's it. You always look to the point of where you want to go next.
Yeah.
Always look where you want to go next. So what I want all of you to do now, let's just say for the next 15 minutes, go out on the track, no setup change or anything, and I just want you to drive around. And for those of you that struggle to hit your marks, you have to hit your marks. So if you have to drive at 5/10, drive at 5/10. If you can do it at 7/10, do it at 7/10. But I don't want anyone to drive flat out. You've got to hit your marks perfectly for as many laps as you can without making a mistake. You got to remember, you got to brake up to a corner, do your down change, have patience in the middle, let the car rotate, and then get back on the power by the apex, straighten the wheel up, squeeze the power down. And again, all this is at no more than 7/10, because we need to get more consistency in your driving. So forget about speed at the moment. You've got to get your brain into gear to understand, to be consistent, and enjoy, have fun.
Locking enabled.
Are you happy with all that, Chris, so far?
Absolutely. No, it's been brilliant. Thank you.
I'll just go to and get a drink and go to the toilet and be back in a couple of seconds.
Lucky you.
It takes us clear. We need to get some heat into these brakes. Cold tires all round. lap time is 129.2. Sector 2 is 5.5 seconds off the pace. Brake temperatures look good. Fastest lap further done, 128.3. Yellow flag, keep your wits about you, mate. Sector 2 is clear. Fastest lap for Broadbent, 127.9. That's your fastest lap. Sector 3 is 2.9 seconds off the pace. That's your fastest lap for Broadbent, 127.7. Sector 2 is 3.9 off the pace. That's your quickest lap. Sector 3 is 1.4 off the pace. The guy behind has just done a 139.9. Seventh position. Sector 2 is 2.5 off the pace. That's your longest lap in this session. The guy behind has just done a 139.5. Sector 1 is 1.9 seconds off the pace. Car in front lap time is at 130.3. Yellow flag in sector 1. That's your quickest so far. You're a second down in sector 3.
So what we'll do now, guys, is finish the lap that you're on, and then go back into the pits and continue to have a chat.
Sector 2 is 0.9 off the pace. That's your best lap in this session. Sector 3 is 0.5 off the pace.
Log building finished.
Okay, so we're all in the pits. So that's probably the easiest 10 laps you've done of Sydney Motorsport Park so far, right? What you've done there does not change whether it's a qualifying lap, whether it's a race lap, whether it's a race distance. You've got to hit your marks. And obviously throughout a race, for example, you're going to have to monitor your braking distance to a corner because you've got tyre wear. You have to monitor your mid-corner speed because you've got tyre wear. You need to monitor your exit because you've got tyre wear. So nothing changes. If you can't do that consistently, you've got to back off, whether it's half a second or a second or whatever it takes for you to hit your marks, because over let's just say if you do the GT3s at Zandvoort on Tuesday night, we're in the car for 2 hours. You do that consistently for 2 hours, half a second off the pace of what you believe you can possibly do, you'll have a faster time throughout that 2 hours than what you would do if you tried to drive flat out and you do one lap at 7 tenths, then you do the next lap at 15 tenths, then you do the next lap at 9 tenths, then you're at 11 tenths, and so on. So that's basically the first day that we will do on the racetrack with a relatively new driver. So when they come back for their second time with us, what we'll tend to work on then is braking for the corner, working out where the braking point is, working out what their retardation is like in their car. In other words, what their braking pressure is like, with braking grip from the brake pads to the rotor to the tire grip to the road. And so what I want to do now is in a couple of minutes, I want you to go out and arrive at turn 2 like you would normally flat out. And I want you to brake to threshold. You need to get on the brakes fast. You want to get down towards that 100% as early as you can. You're going to have to start to bleed off the brake a little bit as you get closer, so you don't lock up the wheels, because obviously as you wash speed off, you lose a little bit of aero, and still make the apex of the corner. Then just drive around until turn 6. So that's where you've got that 90-degree left corner. So that's a stop-go corner, obviously. So again, I want you to go up to that 90-degree left, flat out, brake to 100%, get the car stopped, and still make the apex. When you go around Corporate Hill, the same at the hairpin. Get maximum braking done so you can still make the apex. So this might be a time where play with your brake bias, put a little bit of front bias on, put a little bit of rear bias on, maybe change your brake pressure in the settings, go from 100% pressure down to 80% pressure, and feel what the differences are like with those different settings. And that will give you a little bit more feedback in terms of what you like, because again, what I like isn't necessarily what you're going to like. So when you're ready, go back out, play with your brake bias, front and rear, play with that brake pressure in your setup. I think it's in the braking area, isn't it? Yeah, so your maximum pedal force, go to 100%, go to 90%, go to 80%, and feel what the differences are and see what works for you. But you've got to remember, you've got to make the apex. So if you don't make the apex, you either got to brake a whisker earlier, you got to change your brake bias front or rear, or you got to change that pedal force to suit you for you to get maximum braking in that area. So again, we'll just leave you alone for the next sort of 10-15 minutes and have a tinker, have a play.
Locking enabled.
Exit is clear. Sector 1 is clear. The brakes are cold, be careful. Your brake temperatures are looking good. Sector 3. Sector 3 is yellow. Fastest lap for Broadbent, 124.9. Sector 3 is 4.0 off the pace. Sector 1 is 2.8 seconds off the pace. Sector 2 is 2.4 off the pace. Left side tyres are cold. The car in front has just done a 13.2. Alright Craig, as the car exits through the pits, heads up. Sector 1 is 2.0 off the pace. Sector 2 is 1.9 seconds off the pace. V6. Sector 1 is 1.8 seconds off the pace. Your right front's carrying a bit of wear. cold. Take it easy. Yellow flag sector 1. Green flag sector 1. Sector 1 is 0.9 off the pace. Your rear tyres are cold.
Log building finished.
Alrighty, so at the moment, it doesn't matter where the most important part here is that you've tried different settings, going to the front, going to the rear, trying different brake pressure settings in the game. So if you already don't have a feel of where you want to be, at least this is a start, and it's just a matter of doing some more laps. So obviously in day 2, when we're working with drivers on the track, that's what we tend to work on, is braking, and that braking is pretty much nearly worked on for the entire day. Once they start to have an understanding of what pressures to use at what corners, getting effective braking from start to finish, and they can still make apexes, we start to do some laps at the end of the day, driving say at 8/10, where they're going a bit faster, they're having to process the information quicker, and again, you still got to hit your marks. That's the most important part. So to give you a little bit of an idea of what I do, again, sharing a couple of little secrets. Driving a quali lap is different to driving a race lap. When you're in quali, I don't know why some of the drivers waste their time doing 2 or 3 laps out on the track, because especially this year with our tyre wear being quite high, the reality is you're only getting 1 lap of maximum grip from the tyre. And with that quali lap, you can actually push the tyre quite hard. You can actually scrub the tyre a little bit through corners, providing the car is still going where you want it to go. So if you miss an apex by a foot, or then something's wrong, you've got to make a judgment call whether it's a setup or whether you need to wash off a little bit speed because you've pushed too hard. But if you get a little bit of understeer or a little bit of oversteer, or the car's drifting a little bit, providing it's going in the direction you want it to go, that's okay. But in the race, you can't do that, because it's all about, this year has become about tyre conservation. So when you're in a race, you need to make a decision if you're just going to forget about what everybody else is doing and do your own race, drive to your own lap time, and keep to that lap time and be consistent. If you get sucked in and want to chase somebody, or if you want to extend your gap out on the track, and you want to push that tire to more towards 100% instead of driving at 70 to 80%, you got to remember that you can only do that for a lap or two. And then, unfortunately, there is ramifications, which is a word I can't say, is that you also then have to drive slower for a couple of laps as well, because to push the tire that hard for a lap or 2 laps, you also got to let the tire recover, and you need to roll off on a little bit of speed to let the tire recover. So they're little things that you can do from quali to race to think about in terms of where you want to use the tire. Is it at the start? Is it a couple of laps before going into the pits? Is it the first couple of laps after the pits? Is it the last couple of laps of a race where you might get towards the end of the race? For example, you might have 50% left on your tyres, but the car in front of you, because they've been pushing hard, they might be down to, say, 25%. So even though you've got a lot of tyre wear yourself, you still have more than the car around you, which means you can push harder for that lap or two at whatever point you want it to be during the race. In terms of setup, this is where I'm definitely not the best person, because if I was, I'd be beating Wayne, and not just beating Wayne, I'd be beating him more consistently. Obviously for Townsville, yes, I managed to find that perfect setup that worked for me over that hour and a half in the car. But if you go to, I think it was Sandown, if you go to Darwin, because I didn't put the work in, because I didn't put the effort in, and mentally I had other things on my mind, I struggled at those events. And that's the thing that you can't do if you want to beat Wayne Walker, because Wayne is fairly rarely off his game. And so you need to make sure that you're consistent, work out your strengths and your weaknesses, work out where you want to push the tire, where you need to let the tire relax. Also, the circuit that you're at in terms of the radiuses of the corner. Obviously, with this circuit, we've got a lot of medium to high speed corners, long radius corners that's going to take a lot out of the tire. So you're going to have to do potentially some practice to work out how you can minimize that, work out where your strengths are. So when it comes to race night, you're going to be more in a position of being more consistent. So I'll share with you what I do when it comes to set up for a circuit. So let's just say I've arrived at SMP for the first time to do some laps for the next round. Basically, I actually do start with the base setup. I forget about the setup from the last round, unless that round is similar in the type of circuit that we're going to next. So when you look at Townsville going to SMP, they're totally different circuits. Townsville is a stop-go circuit. Townsville was a circuit that you had to make the car ride the curbs, where SMP is high speed, long radius corners. So it's going to be a totally different setup. So all I change when I went to, let's say, SMP for the first time, I pretty much left the base setup and just made these changes only. I know for me, ride height, for me, for me to get speed tends to work better for me when it's lower than higher. So the first thing I do with ride height is I'll lower it. I also tend to flatten out the ride height a little bit. Now I know that goes against what a lot of you do. However, for me, with my driving style, I can't run a lot of rake. So I tend to even out the ride height. I lower it down a little bit. I generally put the rear wing in the middle. I'll put 50 litres of fuel in like I asked you tonight. And I put bump and rebound front and rear at 15. So it's in the middle all the way through. And I leave everything else how it is, except for obviously brake bias, steering, percentage, etc. I put it to where I want it to do. And I go out on the track and I pretty much know, even when I arrive at turn 1 on cold tyres, how the car responds, whether I'm going to like it or not. If I don't like it, I'll just go back in the pits, make a change. If I feel that it's within the window, I'll do a flying lap. I'll come back in. The first thing I'll look at is the tyres, and I'll just see what the tyre temperature is. I'll see what the spread is across the tyre as well. Now, this is what I don't know. Maybe some of you guys might even be able to help us all out. I don't know what temperature it all should be. All I know is that when it comes to temperature from the inside of the tyre to the outside of the tyre, it should be warmer on the inside, medium in the middle, cooler on the outside. I tend to look for about a 10-degree spread. So if you get 90 on the inside, you might have 85 to 80 in the middle, and then 80 to 75 on the outside, and get that consistent between all 4 tyres.
So what, Doug, just a quick question. Just going back to ride height, when you said you flatten it out and you don't like too much rake, what is too much? Is 10 mil between front and back too much, or?
For me, it is. I've never ran 10 mil on a race weekend ever. But that's not to say it's not going to work for you. Maximum rake I've ever used is about 5 mil.
Yeah, I'm the same. I use 2 mil.
I use about 14 or 15.
Yeah, and I think the Mustangs are also a bit different too, because the guys in the Mustangs, what Wayne shares with us in the past, or what he even shares with you now, he doesn't share with me anymore. But when he did share setups, he used to have a lot of rake on the car. So I don't know if that setup was 2 setups old, so to speak, because obviously he's not going to give you his latest one, but he'll definitely give you one that works, that's within the ballpark of being quick enough. I could never drive Wayne's car. So I don't know if it's a Mustang thing or it's a Stephen White thing.
I think with the Fords and Mustangs, I can't drive Tom Foster's setup. He can't drive mine. And yeah, nobody likes any different car setup on theirs.
Yeah, and go on.
I find, because I've been sim racing for a while, the first place I went to, they shared setups, mate. Every one of them. The quickest guy, we had Madison Down come in there. He'd smashed it by 2 seconds. Here you go, Jace. Here's the setup, mate. Go and see what you can do, right? His setup was shit for me. Other people's was. So when I found someone who had a similar setup, when I started to set up, I'd try to get advice off of them and say, well, I've done this and this, but the car's doing this, and what should I change? And I find people don't want to share it anymore. See, I used to have a base set up for Adelaide and then just work everything off of that for every track.
Yeah, and you're going to get that too. Like,
Like no one will tell you, oh, okay, if I soften the suspension, should I have, should it be higher or should I lower it? No one, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and for example, and this is where Craig's going to hate me a little bit, is I don't have an issue helping someone if they're like 15th and upwards. In fact, I'm a little bit not upset, but it's a shame that Oggy couldn't make it, for example, because I've got a lot of time for Oggy, and he's been a part of my career a little bit in terms of being a supporter, and I love to help him. And so it's a little bit of a shame that he's not here. But when it comes to people, say like Craig, sure, I will have a chat to Craig, and I'm happy to share a couple of things with Craig, but I don't want to help Craig too much because he's a rival.
Because we're competitive.
Yeah,
It depends
exactly.
which Craig you're talking about. I mean, it's the two polar opposites here.
CS, I'm more than Craig Stoddard. More than happy to help you anytime, mate. But with Craig Broadband, I'm happy just to have a really rough, general dirt road sideways conversation.
I think what I've found, Steve, with sharing with the other fast guys, is that it doesn't generally work anyway. Because we've all got our own style, we've all established it's these small little nuances in our driving that whatever the other guy's doing is probably not for you.
Yeah, and this is why I can't help you with setup. And I'm being honest. Like I was on here today doing some laps, and even though the circuit was green, I changed the car inside out, back to front. And do you think I ended up really any better at the end of an hour in the car than what I was at the start? Not really. So my suggestion to you, obviously I don't know what you're doing at the moment, but when you make changes, make big ones. So if you want to go softer in the spring, and let's say it's 100 on the front at the time, go to 60. If you want to go harder in the front spring, don't go up 10, go from 100 to 130. If you're going to change your bump and it's set at 15, go to 1, go to 25, and make big changes so you actually notice them. That's all I do. And then all I finish up with is fine tuning them for the car to behave the way I want it to. So at the start of a setup, I always work and drive accordingly so I continue to hit my marks. Once I start to get to a setup that I'm starting to like, then I drive the car the way I want it to. And so if I miss an apex or I slide off the track, I don't roll off the throttle or anything. I let the car do that, and then I go to myself, okay, what stopped the car from going in that direction that I wanted it to, that I feel that can make a difference? And one of the things I have noticed, which I was talking to, I think, Johnny and Chris before some of the others came on the radio as we got closer to time starting, is I do notice that bump and rebound tend to have an effect as a sway bar would. And I notice that the sway bars, for me, don't make as much of a difference as what bump and rebound does. So these are little things that I found out, but who knows if it works for you. So with setup, unfortunately, I don't have any magical numbers or things that you should do. But in terms of how I start a setup and the procedures of what I do, that's what I have shared.
I think the biggest thing for me is just understanding what the inputs change. I don't have a good enough grasp on if I change spring rates or if I change slow bump and fast bump. I'm not quite sure I actually feel what the difference is. Same with anti-roll bar. So I sort of just, if I get to a point that I'm not understanding or not feeling it, I'll just run with what I'm got. And if it's crap on the night, it's crap on the night. But
yeah, and this is the thing, and this is what it all comes back to. Like at the moment, I'm single. At the moment, I'm not working, and so I've got time to put into the sim. When you're married, when you've got partners, when you've got families, when you've got full-time jobs, when you've got other things in life that's more of a priority, I can totally understand that driving on the sim is your time. It might be a bit of luxury time for you, and you might only get a chance to do an hour of practice before a race night. But you've just got to remember, though, you can't have the same results as someone that spent 6 hours of practice for that same night. So my advice to you when it comes to understanding some of those changes, like to give you an idea about a roll bar, disconnect the roll bar and then go to, full stiff. And by normal, you'll notice a difference, and then go in the middle. And that way you'll actually get to notice the changes. Don't make little changes, make big ones so you actually get to notice them.
And
Well,
just a hint, when you detach the roll bar, it is not actually detached. I found out on RF2, it is the lowest setting you can possibly go.
Is that true? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Even I've learned something now.
Interesting.
He's-
That's
Or
what I
maybe,
wanted.
maybe that's the trick. Then White Dog, like you're saying, make massive changes. I know especially with slow bump and fast bump, not understanding what it actually does when you do an input, what the output is. So yeah, maybe that's the idea. Just make big changes.
Yeah, and it's the same with your rear wing too. Like, people don't realize, everyone just wants to get the wing off to get straight line speed. Obviously, it's going to help for better fuel economy. But the thing is, if the car's not being pushed into the ground, you're going to have more tire wear. So it's a compromise. But we'll do more questions and stuff at the end. We're nearly done. One thing I notice in races is drivers' lack of awareness. And it was really, really interesting on Saturday night. I did JT's event, and which is now called the Three Stooges. I think it's a great fun night. There's no pressure. It's a fixed setup. There's reverse grid races. They do a reverse grid in race 2 for the top 10. Then race 3, they do a full reverse grid. And then race 4, they go back to qualifying position. Then they do a reverse grid race for the top 10 again. And then we do a reverse grid race for the whole field again. And on Saturday night, when we did the reverse grid race for the whole field, holy moly, we were at Alton Park. And when we come out of turn 1 at Alton Park, I think there was about 10 to 15 cars involved in a pileup. And every reverse grid race we did that night, there was a situation where 5 or 6 cars minimum got involved. But you know what? The fast guys, most of them anyway, got through the crash. And the reason why is because they're looking ahead, they're anticipating, they're planning, they're watching how close cars are to each other. They're looking to see if 2 cars touch and they start to go sideways, well, where's that car trajectory going to go? Do they need to back off? Do they need to speed up? Do they need to change their position on the track? And what happened by the end of the night, the guys were saying that, you know what, these reverse races are shit. We hate them. There's always the big crashes and rah, 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 rah. And this is the thing. It's not the pros that are having the crashes. It's the novices and amateurs that are having the crashes. I think reverse grid racing is great because it gives you guys a chance that don't get a chance to race at the front to feel the pressure of actually being on the front row, and you've got the whole field behind you. It also puts you in a different emotion. It gives you different adrenaline. It gives you different sensations of what it is where you normally would qualify and where you normally would race. And it also gives you practice at self-awareness of who's coming up behind you, who's beside you, who's around you in those events. And so if I can share any information when it comes to racing, forgetting about the reverse grid races now, a lot of people come together at the start of a race. Like we saw in Townsville, I think we had a couple of guys come together in Townsville before we got to turn 2. Technically, I guess it's turn 1, but it's really turn 2 down at the hairpin. And it's because I know the computer plays a part. Don't get me wrong there. I've been on the hard end of the stick, I think, with James Clearly, I think it was, in Darwin, coming out of the hairpin, we're side by side. And for whatever reason, we both went out off the road. I don't know why. I don't blame him. Hopefully he doesn't blame me. But there are situations where people just hit people or put themselves in silly situations where if you were just a little bit patient, or if you were thinking ahead more, or if you were thinking more of the long-term gain rather than the short-term gain, you'd have a better result. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being aggressive, but again, your mind has to be in front of the car, watching what everybody is doing and anticipating what everybody is doing, so you can make smarter decisions if something does pop up. Because Eastern Creek's going to be a great one, or SMP, it's going to be a really interesting one here, because obviously the start's downhill. So making sure that everyone stays stationary on the start might be an issue if you don't have a handbrake button or a proper handbrake lever, for example, to use. Everyone's going to be sprinting into turn one. Turn one's not going to be so much of a big deal, because we should be able to run 2x2 through there comfortably, if not close to maybe 3x3 for some of you. But turn two, you're going to be arriving there at 200k with cold tires, cold brakes, and people don't understand that you can't brake in the same place as what you would if you're at the front of the field. At the front of the field, you can go to, say, let's say the 100-meter marker before you get on the brakes. But if you're running 10th or 15th in the field, you're going to have to start rolling off the gas and getting on the brakes at the 150-meter board, because you get the ricochet effect like you get on the freeway when the traffic slows down for no reason. It's exactly the same thing. So when it comes to racecraft, have a little bit of a think about how you're going to manage that, rather than, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but this is what a lot of people tend to do, is they get tunnel vision, they get fixated, and they see an opportunity, they see a gap, and they go for it. And they don't think about the long-term gain. Now, if it's calculated and you can do it with control and everything works out for you, fantastic. But you need to remember too, it's a computer game. I'm no different. I've made some great moves on Wayne over the last 12 months that I've known him, but I've also fucked up a couple of them too. And so it's a matter of you managing your risk for reward, because at the end of the day, as we all know, to finish first, you must finish. To finish in the best position you've ever had, you must finish. And if you watch Wayne in a reverse grid race, if you did some racing with us last year when we did the reverse grid races, or if you've managed to do a JT night, when we do the reverse grid races, Wayne is actually one of the few people that will actually hold back and wait. He just watches everyone crash into each other and go through the motions. Wayne always gets through the first lap before he actually starts to race. Now, for me, I can take advantage of that. And in the past I have, but there's also been times where it hasn't worked out for me because I've taken too many risks. So I'm just sort of sharing some racecraft with you in terms of helping you manage being around other cars on the track. So in terms of finishing up, what I want to do, you can put, again, whatever setup you want to put in. If you want to put something different in, put low fuel in if you want to put 20 liters in or whatever, or maybe not 20 liters because you want to do a couple of laps. I want you to do 2 flying laps, 2 time laps, 3 laps, 4 laps total, obviously, with an out lap and an in lap. And I want you to push as hard as you can push, but still hit your marks. Because what's going to happen now, when you're driving at 6 tenths, 7 tenths, whatever it was that you're driving at before, you're calm, you're relaxed. It's easy to keep your mind in front of the car. It's easy to be consistent. What's hard to be consistent is being at 10 tenths on the brake, being at 10 tenths through the corner, being at 10 tenths on the exit of the corner. Then you've got your brake temperatures going up, you've got your tire wear going up, the car starts to get lazy, gets fatigued. You start to get fatigued as well over a long period of time. But see if you can now put together a couple of laps closer to driving at 10 tenths and still hit your marks. And once you've done that, we'll come in and then we'll do a question time at the end, and I'll just say thank you very much for the night.
Alrighty.
Hey Steve, just have a quick question about your bump rebound. Is
Yes.
one soft and say 12 hard?
Yeah, as far as I understand, 1 is going to give you a lot of movement, and 23, if that's the maximum number, you'll get less movement.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got
bigger number resists.
Lovely. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
Locking enabled.
Whilst everyone's doing their warm-up lap, I thought I'd just share in the Facebook group that we created this year. It's something that Brett shared on the Discord channel, the general chat, and it's a just a little cheat sheet on car setup.
Your exit's clear. Across the white line then.
It might be something that
We've got cold tyres, we need to get some heated.
and so feel free after tonight to check it out.
Yeah, that one really helped me with the rebound and thinking of everything in understeer versus oversteer, which I think was really good for my learning.
So there's another question about Discord. Every time I go into it, it says I don't have permission to put things on the general chat. From that, have I done something wrong there in terms of setup?
Yeah, of course you have.
It's Discord's yeah, I'll fix it up, John. Leave it with me.
Oh, come on, mate. You're Facebook fans. You're fucking Discord. Just wondering when it can catch up.
That's it, mate. That's it.
Hey, the wheels getting done left, right, and centre at the moment before last.
Sector 2 is yellow. It's a car leaving the pits. For a second off the place in sector 1. Brake temperatures look good. That's your quickest lap in this session. Sector 3 is 1.6 off the pace. The guy in front has just done a 27.2. Sector 1 is 1.6 off the pace. 8 seconds off the pace. P6. You've got 10 minutes of fuel remaining. Sector 2 is 0.6 off the pace. Sector 1 is 4 seconds off the pace.
I've only got one thing to say, Steve.
What's that?
No way, mate. Looking good, man.
Sector 2 is 0.9
Well,
off the pace.
should have been in this fucking room.
Settle down, Jason.
I find the gamesmanship and the politics and the mind games and all to actually share a little bit of fuel what to do, and then they
Sector 3 is
Brett will ahead of himself. I'll never be an arsehole to anyone. I'll never not share things. But obviously I'll share more with people that need more help, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I try to do with mine as well. If any of anyone's my setups, whatever, I just find people don't like them. So I tend to send them backwards rather than forwards, but I would just drive a bit different.
The only thing I ask is my setup, please send it back.
So what we'll do, guys, we'll just finish up the laps that you're on and we'll go into the pits and do a conclusion to tonight and whatever questions and thoughts that you have that you want to share.
The bodywork's in pretty bad shape. We might need to fix that.
Log building finished.
Or in the garage, take that orange car out. Right.
Okay, so as Paulie is coming into the pits, as a bit of a conclusion to all this, I can only assume that, like when you did those 2 laps then, as soon as you start putting yourself under the stress again, it's amazing how those little mistakes creep in, or misjudging, not being able to process the information fast enough, and all of a sudden you start to creep back to where you were. So I know all of you are very different to me in terms of how your life's set out for you, but if you do get some time, try to spend some time on the computer, in the game, just driving at 8/10, 9/10, wherever you feel comfortable, where you can hit your marks consistently and train your brain to be able to do that all the time, because that is definitely one component that I notice when I do watch some of you, whether it's in a race broadcast or during practice or whatever, and I do have a little bit of a sticky beat of that inconsistency. And I'm not trying to drum up business for the GT3 race on Tuesday night, but
At what time?
yeah, exactly, 8 o'clock qualifying. I can't stress enough how cool it is if you guys do have some time to come and do some of the GT races, to drive for 2 hours in that seat, and you know the time you spend beforehand in practice and qualifying, so it's not just 2 hours, but to concentrate for 2 hours, and the race starts in the dark, so you do tend to lose a few of your senses for the first 15 minutes, and you are it's the blind leading the blind sometimes a little bit if the circuit is quite dark, in terms of remembering where your braking markers are and even which direction the corners go sometimes. It's a lot of fun. And also the F1 car, the same thing again. It's mind training. And in terms of, like anything, what you put in, you get out. And unfortunately, yes, it is a computer game. Yes, sometimes we can crash without actually hitting each other. You know, the curbs, you know, some of them are quite slippery, within their own abilities and where they're at with how much time they can spend on the sim. And we all have an awesome time. I don't claim to be an expert. I just have been able to put time in because of COVID. Normally, I'm not able to do that. I do a 100K mountain bike race in February every year. And with all my traveling during the year, it's not until sort of towards the end of November, start of December, where I actually start training for this event. And I know people that are a hell of a lot fitter than what I am, and they won't do the 100K because they know the torture, they know the pain, they know that the mind games that will happen during the day when you're out there for 100K in the bush, doing single track fire roads, climbing up to 3,500 meters over that 100K. And I know that I should be a lot fitter too, but the reason why I make it to the end is because of my mind. It's got nothing to do with my fitness. It's my mind power. And so I just wish you all the best with everything you do. And if you are good enough to beat me, well, good luck. But you know what you're up against now if you haven't known much about me before. And that's what it takes if you want to win these races, because last year it was really maybe Wayne and myself fighting for the championship. This year there's 5 drivers, possibly 6 or 7, that are actually in the hunt really for the championship. The top 10 guys in this championship this year are very competitive, and you've nearly got half of the field that are actually quite closely matched. And so it's like supercars. Every year it just gets harder and tougher, and this is what we have this year. So if any of you guys have got any questions you want to throw at me, or thoughts, or anything you want to share to the group, feel free.
Steve, I just want to say thanks to you for giving your time up, bud. It's been fantastic. Yeah, but thank you very much for that.
My pleasure, Jono. It's better than watching Netflix.
Yeah, cheers, Steve. I do have a question. In terms of braking style and that, because I noticed that you're very good at how quickly and smoothly you transition into and out of the corners. Like I know that I tend to either over brake and get too much rotation, or under brake and end off the track. Do you have any braking tips?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Brady. When you train a novice, you need to go through the jigsaw puzzle like we have tonight. And by any means, I'm not saying that anyone's a novice. This is what we do with real drivers on track. When you're a pro, let's just say at my level, let's say I get a V8 supercar drive tomorrow, and I am going to drive in the championship full time next year for, let's say, Erebus. The only thing I need to work on, and it's going to take time, is braking. When you're a pro, it's all about how you can stop the car in the shortest distance, how you can get the car to rotate and get into your apex so you can still hit your mark. When you're a novice and an amateur, it's all about exit. And unfortunately, Brady, I don't have really a magic pill. I can share with you what I do. I tend to run more rear brake than front brake because I like, when it comes to turning, that the car turns in quickly. That's part of how I get the car to turn in quickly, is I do run a bit of rear brake. But it's all about practice, like what we started to work on before. They're all the things that I've done in the game to work out how I can brake in the shortest distance. I've tried the brake bias forward. I've tried the brake bias backwards. I've tried the brake pressure at 100%. I've tried the brake pressure at 80%. And it's just practice, practice, practice. And if you haven't tried these things before, well, at least now, Brady, it gives you a little bit more insight to what you can do to improve your braking. If you already have done that before and you've already got your settings matched and you're at your max, the most important part is when it comes to corner entry, you've got to have the speed set. So it doesn't matter what you do. If the corner can only be taken, let's say turn 1 at Eastern Creek here, if turn 1 minimum speed at the apex is 135k, you've got to hit 135k. Now, where you hit that 135k is important, because if you brake 5 meters too late and you hit the apex at, say, 140k, well, you're not going to make it through the corner. If you brake too early and hit the apex at 125k, well, obviously you can accelerate through the corner, but obviously the time through that section is going to be slow. So it's a balancing act in able to be able to get the brakes to perform at the limit of the tire and be able to carry the limit of that tire into the apex, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes lots of sense. Yeah, I tend to run more front, just because I think previously I've had issues braking and having the car unsettled.
With it at the back, you can kind of steer with your brake pedal going into the corner, and you just trail it off as you come towards the apex. But you definitely can use your brake pressure to get the car rotated as well when it's towards the rear. You can't do that with the front.
No, and it's interesting because with Rod and I, he can't run my brake setup, for example, because for him, the rear is facing the wrong direction before he can say boo, because he's more of that traditionalist in terms of how he puts the brakes on, how he finds maximum pressure to the point of getting the car to turn into the corner, because he likes it a little bit more lazy than what I do. Anyone else got any thoughts or feelings or feedback or anything that hasn't been brought up tonight that they want to bring up?
I think, to be honest, the key is obviously practice. That's what it comes down to.
It does, and I can't lie to you. Going into Townsville, I think I did 6 hours of practice. When I went to Sandown and when I went to Darwin, because I was traveling through May, I was lucky to put in an hour, and my result reflected in that time, because I had no result for those 2 rounds.
And to put that in perspective for me, I do probably 2 or 3 practice races to make sure I can go as quickly as I can against the AI, and at that tyre wear at that race distance. And for Townsville, yeah, I probably did more than Steve.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I've never done that. I've never actually done a race in that sort of situation. I've only ever done practice, and
you don't even need the AI on there. Like, just go for it. But yeah, it just gives you an idea how your tyres are going to go and that sort of thing. I think we spoke before the race, Steve.
Yeah.
About what sort of pace we needed to get to and that sort of thing, and yeah, targets and try and achieve them, I guess.
Yeah, and this is all I've done, guys. All I've ever done is in terms of that race preparation itself. I've only ever gone out and wasted a tank of fuel to see how many laps I can do. I use a set of tires to see how long they'll last. When you're at the front, unfortunately, we are a little bit biased in terms of what our options are, because you've got to make a set of tires last in a 40-minute race, 20 minutes. You've got to be able to get a tank of fuel and have the tires last. So at the front, we have to run on hards. We have no option. I think Craig was one of the guinea pigs that tried to do a soft tire run at some stage, and it didn't work out.
Did you do hards at Townsville? I thought we were all on softs.
We're all on softs, but for all the
yeah,
other
we
races,
barely made it though.
Yeah.
Like it was like 5% or something.
Yeah, exactly. And whereas when you're running half a second slower to a second slower than what the pace of the front guys are doing, you actually do have an opportunity to actually put softs on to go faster. But you've got to remember, you can't scrub the tire. You can't miss an apex. You can't wash off wide. You can't wheel spin 24 hours a day. You've got to work the tire towards its limit without actually going over it. And it might feel slower at the time, but I'll guarantee you, if you look at it over a stint, you will get more laps if you drive a couple of tenths slower. You'll get more laps if you'll go faster if you don't make mistakes. And seeing some of the tire wear that some of the guys get in those stats in that live racer thingy, I can't remember the name of it, that I've looked at a couple of times. Like some of the guys down the back have got nearly double the tire wear of the guys at the front, and that's because they keep winding the lock on with understeer, for example. They don't roll off the gas, they don't slow the car down, they just try to drive through it. And there's another good friend of mine who I'm sure a lot of you know in the racing industry called Mike McLean from New Zealand. He does a lot of JT's nights, and he loves a drift. There's no man that I know that loves driving sideways more than that bloke. But the thing is, it kills him because he's only fast for the first couple of laps in a race, and then he dies off because obviously the tire wear that he has is more excessive than a lot of the others.
That's what I learnt tonight. Don't drive so bloody hard. I tend to, my tires go off. I'm good for a couple of laps, and then you guys pull away, and yeah, that's it. That's
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you drive slow. It just doesn't mean you push the tire past its
and there's
boundaries.
a tip for the other guys too. Turn your volume for your tires up so you can hear them when they scrub. That way you got a cue to know when you're over pushing your tire. You can do that in the R Factor sound mixer.
Hey guys, I've got to take off. White Dog, that was absolutely awesome tonight. Appreciate it. Gives a lot more sort of background to what to look out for. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dunny. We'll see you next time, brother.
Yeah.
I'm the same, guys. I've got to be up in a few hours to go to work, so I'll bid you a goodbye. But thank you very much.
No worries, Jono.
I appreciate
White
that,
Dog.
Steve.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Really
no,
appreciate
thanks,
it.
mate. Awesome night.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Cheers for that. It was awesome.
No worries, Chris. We'll yeah, we'll say thank you very much, and we'll obviously see you Tuesday night or in a couple of weeks when we do race, and all the best with it all. And
Hey, can I make a suggestion?
sure.
You can't win a race on the first lap. So for anyone who starts taking people out in the first corner, how come we don't have double demerit points? We all know you can't win it on the first lap, so why go in there like a bullet a go?
You know what's really interesting there, Jace, is I actually do have a few friends that do iRacing and that don't really do R Factor, and the one thing they do comment on is we're actually as a group pretty good compared to other organisations that actually race.
I understand that. It's the most common thing in sim racing. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely, and you'll never change that. And while we're all calm here, and there's no stress, there's no anxiety, there's no adrenaline, and opportunity, you know, to see a gap and all the rest. I'm no different. Like I make mistakes too, and I don't know if I've actually caused a big crash or anything over the time that I've been doing it, but I've definitely had misfortune of taking risks that I shouldn't. But it's just to give the guys more thoughts and more in thought in terms of what goes through a driver's head and why some people crash and some people don't, for example.
Can I ask you something about the mod? It's the only mod in RF2. Do you believe we need another V8 mod to make this one better than what it is? Or do you think these guys don't listen and do their own thing?
Oh, I would love to be the test driver for RF2. A lot of their dynamics and behaviors and sounds, and with some of the circuits, I would love to be their test driver for it. But at the end of the day, as we all know, it's pretty much a free game. And while it's a free game, this is what we have to work with, and I get frustrated myself. But at the end of the day, I did a little bit of iRacing, and I just hated. I hated forking out $100 every week for a
Mate,
track.
I'm the same. That's why I just left it. But when I was at RF1, we had the awesome mod. We had the FVR mod. No one raced the FVR mod. But
Yeah.
at least we had competition. You know what I mean? FVR got better and better. But FVR at the moment, to me, why are the 21 cars out? What's the difference what's the two differences? The rear wing and what else is it? The suspension component, isn't that the only thing?
Yeah, and obviously there's a few cosmetic things, and at the end of the day, everyone feels that warm, fuzzy feeling inside.
I just know if I came into money tomorrow, mate, the first thing I would do is get someone to make some new models and try to get someone with the physics and everything, because I think that's the one thing RF2 is missing, is another V8 mod to push each other.
Yeah.
For us to get the best mod and not rely on waiting 10 years for Studio 397 to get a license.
Yeah, look.
Yeah, that is one of the things about R Factor 2 is it's a lot of it is built around volunteerism. FVR, obviously, it's all just a team of volunteers. We don't even know if the V8 supercar mod that has been created, what engineering data is sitting behind it. So there's probable things that we're trying to do, things that we're trying to set up, that aren't going to work for us because it might be missing that integral data needed. At the end of the day, it's still a computer game. Whereas with the GT3s, as an example, that data has come from the manufacturers. The engineering data has been put into the actual cars themselves.
Yeah. They're just shit. I don't like them. Sorry. I'll drive your F1. I just don't like GT3.
That's okay.
That's just me. You know what I mean? But I like to drive anything and give it a go. But they're just to me are boring.
And that's what makes the world a happy place, doesn't it? Because if we
Yep,
all
we're all
enjoy-
individuals.
Absolutely. And, you know, if, for example, if DUS was only getting 10 cars for a grid for a race, I don't know if I'd race, It's the fact that we get 20 cars consistently minimum this year, and that's what's made it great.
Well, I'll tell you what. This year I've raced at 3 leagues, right? Sim Wars. Reason I left there is an admin fucking swore and abused fucking Frosty, Halil, right? Then a second admin goes and does it. Same fucking admin that were here in the beginning when Dust was a piece of shit, right? And I'll say that because I was here. I've seen it all. So I walked away from here too. This would be the most professional I've been in for a while. I just went to the Veterans Down Under League. Jamie McKnight is the biggest fucking girl you will ever meet, has offered Halil out twice, has given him his work address to go down there and punch on. I had to leave because if the fucking bloke had given me his address, mate, I would have drove from Bundaberg to Sydney to kick the cunt's ass. I've dealt with people like him for 35 years in the sport, mate.
That's the
Big
end of the
jams
session.
who, when they
P3.
get to the top, think everyone loves them and I'm the best and I must talk about myself and I can't shut up.
Oh, no.
There you go.
And I just won't put up with, a 40-year-old Veterans League with 40-year-old people, and here they are, babysitting a champion.